All right. Welcome to IT Security Labs, everyone. My name is Howard, and today we have yet another live stream where we're going to do some ethical hacking. So if your goal is to learn ethical hacking in a safe lab environment, and you want to hang out with a community of people that want to learn just like you're in the right place. And we do this every Sunday, 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. And today I have a very good one. I'm going to show you how we can actually exploit an Exchange server, a Microsoft Exchange server. This is a very popular vulnerability from last year, and I'm late to the game, but I read about it today, and it's really fascinating. So I hope you're going to enjoy and learn from us as well. So here's our quick agenda. We're going to start by enumerating a Windows server, the usual nmap scan to identify the ports that are running. Then we're going to see right away that it's running a Microsoft Exchange. And the one thing that we want to do when we find Exchange is what version is it, and is it one of the vulnerable versions out there? And if we identify that it's actually vulnerable, then we can run the exploits, and then we can observe the behavior of the exploits, understand what's happening behind the wire and how we got the exploit to work. Then we can look for indicators of compromise. Thank you, everybody, for joining. I see a lot of people are still joining right now. Phil and BT, thank you all for being here. I know you're consistently here. That's what we have. If you want to set up your own lab, I have some instructions that I'll share with you, and you can do the same. But of course, we're going to try to loot some credentials here with John, and then we'll talk about why this type of attack does not show up, at least in my lab environment, on the wire, so Suricata can see it. But host-based intrusion detection system works, just not on the network, and we'll discuss that in a little bit here. And if you're brand new here, my name is Howard, and I've been doing this for a while now. I have a few certifications that you can see here. I made videos of me going through most of these certifications and sharing some of my experience with you. So this is a journey that we are in together. You join me every Sunday, 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. We can do this and we can grow together. That's the goal for this. And we're in a lab environment, which you can also set up for yourself. We have our Kali Linux here running. We have a Linux, Unify layer 3 switch that is actually forwarding a copy of the traffic to Suricata, Security Onion, and everything. And we also have a domain controller machine that is running email today. So that's what we have. With that, let's jump to our lab and see if we can potentially just be able to just attack this machine. So first, what led me to this? I was reading some of this documentation, and it says that in late September of 2021, there was an intrusion that was observed within initial access was gained by threat actors who were exploiting multiple vulnerabilities in Microsoft Exchange. And I thought to myself, this is a fun one, so might as well do it, right? These threat actors, in this case, were attributed to a group called Phosphorus. They think it's from Iran, so it's a nation state. This is it's called ProxyShell, and was deployed in multiple web shells, which led to discovery actions, dumping of LS, ASS, and use of peeling for proxy chains and things like that for fast reverse shells. So I encourage you to read this document here that explains the whole thing. But this is an actual attack that even today, some web servers on Shodan. Oh, by the way, quick shout out to Shodan. There is a $5 Shodan premium that you can buy right now if you go to shodan.com. They're not sponsoring me. They're selling their API access or pro version for $5 a piece or something like that. If you want to interact with Shodan for free, $5 for the year, I think you should go and buy it. So we're going to do exactly what these groups here did. We're going to at least, try some of it, not exactly, but try some of the steps that they took, these APTs. And by the way, they delivered a lot of ransomware, and they're still doing it up to today. So some of the tactics that I'm showing you today, if you see people's vulnerable servers on Shodan, please don't try them, because they will actually work just like what we're doing here, and it's illegal. Just a quick warning there. So on day one, they'll observe that initial access with ProxyShell exploitation of Exchange server. So we will do that. We'll actually log in with an ASPX server with the random name just like what you see here. So that's what we see on this first day one here. Then, of course, execution of hostname, ifconfig, net user. We'll probably just run some of those commands just to follow this timeline of events. Then we will do things like maybe persistence. We can create a user if we want to using PowerShell, but I don't see value in that. I'm going to actually try to dump the credentials using Mimikatz. So we'll actually try to do most of these things. And by the way, like I said, this is an actual vulnerability in Windows machines. If you're interested in setting up your own lab, I found some nice instructions. And you know me, I do not reinvent the wheel. Here are some instructions on how you can deploy this lab. I did not follow this part of the instructions, so please don't ask me about this. I just set up my own lab using Packer and Vagrant. And then once the machine was up, I ran these commands and just followed everything from creating domain controller with users and everything here, including Exchange. It took about 5 hours for the machine to build. So I started the process. Within 15 minutes, I was done. Then I left it and I came back and it was done. So then the attack. So those instructions will set up the lab for you. My lab is already set up. This is the machine running Exchange. And that machine is actually on 192.168.38.248. So let's start the attack here. Maybe, let me leave that Metasploit there. So I made a directory on my Kali Linux machine, in my machines. NeoDC. If you want this virtual machine as well, let me know. I can export and share with you. Just know that it requires about 8 gigs of RAM and 4 CPUs and 50 gigs on the hard drive. So it might be a big machine. So either way, either you build your own or I give you mine, doesn't matter. I can always share with my what I have. Okay, let's do an nmap -sv -sc. Just the top 1000 ports. 1 and 2, 68.38.248, I believe. Let's just check our IP address quick here. Make sure that it didn't change. CMD. ifconfig. ipconfig. You see what happens? ifconfig in Windows. Yeah, 248. So that's our IP address. You can use netdiscover to find it. But in this case, that's really not our main objective. We want to break into a Microsoft Exchange server, as you saw here. So, like I said, for those who just joined, we are following the path of an advanced persistent threat, or a nation-state group that is written in this article. And, you know, as cybersecurity people, I think it's important for us to spend some time reading articles like this and just finding out, okay, what are they? What's really happening there? So we're going for the ProxyShell vulnerability, and it's actually 3 vulnerabilities. One of them is a server-side request forgery attack that allows them to gain reversion on the system, but it's a combination of these 3 CVEs that we have. I posted a link to this report if you really want to jump in and read more about it. I also found a lot of indicators that shows how this attack works and how you can detect them in your environment. But with our nmap results here, let me see. Yeah, we end up with these. I just want to make sure that we save some time. So same scan. The first thing that you're going to see is port 23, right? So this is a very popular vulnerability, ProxyShell. So, I mean, port 25. If you see port 25, you start thinking, is this going to be vulnerable to ProxyShell? So in this case, what we can do is try to identify, okay, what version of email is this? Is this email running, you know, Exchange 2003 or something ridiculous like that that we can exploit? Or in this case, Exchange 2016. So we can keep scrolling down. It's already spitting out more information. We know that this is mailer dc.itsecurity-labs.local. So we know this is our domain, itsecurity-lab or itsl.local. And this is the name of the machine. That's the fully qualified domain name for the machine. We're also running port 53. So we now know this is a very silly administrator. They're running a domain controller and an email server on the same exact machine, because we have port 53 for DNS and we have LDAP and Kerberos showing up here. Right away, you know this is the most important machine on the network. Yet here we are putting emails on top of that. To be honest, I think without chastising people, it's not a smart idea to put all these things together. Best practice, put your email somewhere else and put the other stuff somewhere else. So here, we see that ProxyShell shows up on port 81. All right. Then more domain information. And here's a version of our Windows machine from the 445 port. It's actually Windows Server 2016 standard, and the build number is actually shown here. So what this means is we can go and look up also what's vulnerable on this specific version of Windows. Especially in my lab environment, I made sure that it doesn't get updates. I made sure that the Exchange server doesn't get updates either, because I didn't want it to accidentally update and then my exploits won't work. And most people do lock their environments to not get updates as well, especially people who run Linux, because they don't like surprises. All right, so 587 here, simple mail transfer protocol for Exchange. We did try to send hello commands in here, and we can see that we can interact with Exchange. All right. So we have Windows Server 2016 running, and it's running Microsoft Exchange. So you can see where this is going. The first thing is, of course, you're going to be saying, okay, I'm not really sure what version of Exchange there is, but what I know is that the operating system at least is Server 2016. You can try to use your search exploit. Maybe let's say Exchange. Okay, we found one. I don't think this is the one, but at least we found something. If you say Exchange, you'll find a lot of them. So looking through all these results here, of course, I just updated my exploit DB today. I see that we have this one here from 2019, Exchange 2019, proxy logon. And we also even have Metasploit modules here. So maybe let's look for the... There is a way for you to actually search with search exploit properly. But I thought I can cheat, but no. All right. So we have a lot of them, the vulnerabilities here. Through trial and error or through actually more enumeration, you should be able to identify that, you know, here's a server-side request forgery. That's available. We actually have a Python script, and it's called proxy logon. We can try that one to see if it works. But in this case, I'm not going to bore you through the whole process of trying to identify mine. But there is also a script online that you can use to see if this is going to be vulnerable to, say, ProxyShell. Let me see. If I can type grep. All right, there's an Nmap SEC script that you can run as well. I already have it here. It's the ProxyShell NCE. You can run that against the system as well, and it will tell you, hey, this thing is vulnerable to ProxyShell. Once you identify that it's vulnerable to ProxyShell, all you need to do is just launch Metasploit. Let me save console. If you don't like Metasploit, I'll also show you, I have another script that I found that actually works called ProxyShell Auto. I'll share with you a link in the comments after this is done. But ProxyShell Auto is just a Python script, probably one of the ones in Metasploit. Through searching, this one was highly recommended. So we can cat ProxyShell Auto. This is a very, very long script. But through reading through, if you go through it, it needs to go through the Exchange front-end HTTP proxy and see if it can actually write and also upload content to it through server-side request forgery. So in this case, when I run it, you're going to see that it will try to run my shell, my .aspx shell. It will try to run in the OWA auth section. Then it will actually move on. If it doesn't write, then it will move on to all these parts until it can write a shell. So this is a web shell upload vulnerability where we generate an ASPX file. I've done that before when I was going through the OSCP, multiple videos on this channel that shows you how to upload ASPX files and end up with a web shell, or even use nishing with ASPX. But that's what this one is going to do for us. And it will be putting them in any of these locations here, depending on how it runs. And the idea is, when we run it, so Python 3 proxyshell.py -t, we have to give it the fully qualified domain name of the site or the IP address. In this case, I have mailer.dc.itsl.local. You might be like, hey, where did you find that? Actually, Nmap showed us this. Let me see where my Nmap results are. If you look through our Nmap results, it was one of the first things that we saw. Right here, the DNS computer name. So I went to etc host. And made an entry. You see, I still have a bunch of them from Hack the Box and stuff. But I put the IP address and the fully qualified domain name. Classic thing that you do once you find out a machine is a fully qualified domain name, update your etc host with the IP address and whatever fully qualified domain name that you found there. All right, now let's launch our Metasploit. You may save console. Oh, let me exit out of this one first. And once my Metasploit launches, it looks like it's taking its sweet time. Then we can run the module, in this case, for the proxy shell, see if the victim actually accepts our shell. And then I will show you in our security onion, we have some detection rules in here that I would like to show you, both for Straka, some Yara rules that you can add for this vulnerability, and also some Suricata rules that you can add. But there is a catch, which I will tell you why you might not be able to see the traffic, especially in this lab environment. And some of you already know why, given the ports that we're using, but I'll leave that one for later. So in this case, let's say we want to use the exploit Windows HTTP Exchange Proxy Shell RSCE. There's a couple of them, by the way, that you can use. Let me find our document here for the lab setup, which will make your life easier. There's a couple of them. You can use this one, the proxy logon right here, or proxy shell. Maybe let's try the second one first. Let's clear the screen, show options. All right, so this here, this module from Metasploit, the email is not required, as you can see, but it requires our host just like any other module. The remote port is always 443. I spent so much time trying to make it work on port 80, and I couldn't because Exchange will force you to translate your traffic back to 443. I tried actually to break into Exchange and force that, but didn't work. Okay, but what's required of us is, in this case, L host and R host. So let's set those. If 0, I think that's my L host. Then set R host to 192.168.38.248. Okay, I'm going to set the email here because I just happen to know the email for the administrator, but I don't think it's required. You can always find these emails through some social engineering if you wanted to. But I'll put an email here to make sure that this thing is actually working on my domain that I have. Show options. All right. Set, what is it called? Email. Domain admin at my domain, itsecurity-lab.local. All right. Run or exploit, doesn't matter. So this will take a while, but I want us to watch this output closely as to what it's doing, because from Metasploit, we can see here. It's going to retrieve a backend fully qualified domain name using RPC request. So we need to have RPC open. In this case, our server is servicing that. Then it's assigning the mailbox import export role. So it's actually working. And here's an interesting one. Let me move myself out of the way here. Notice how we wrote to C program files, Microsoft Exchange, the front end, HTTP proxy, OWA auth location here. And this is a randomly generated file. This path here and many other paths that we'll see with the other way around, that's where we write these random ASPX shell files. And then, of course, depending on which type of payload you have, it might be a staged payload. You will see a bunch of other traffic coming in soon after that. Or in this case, this one is actually a staged payload here because we are sending now more bytes. So 200,774 bytes are now being sent this time, which is a bigger load than what we did earlier when we delivered this one. All right, so let's watch it until it actually finishes. And if you already know, please let me know in the comments, why can't we detect this using Suricata? Because I have a bunch of Suricata rules that I'm running right now. Suricata is listening to everything that I'm doing. I also have Straka listening and passing through all these files that I'm sending. My detection is not seeing this, or my rules are not firing. And I would like to know, because I think that's part of this learning experience that we have on this channel, is we have to ask ourselves, okay, can I see that? I will tell you for sure that if you were monitoring this host using host-based intrusion detection system and monitoring this path here for random strings, you can use things like regex and say, hey, if I see a random string being written and it ends with .aspx and it's not these common files, I would like to know. You actually get alerts. So you just have to watch this path, not just this path, but all the other ones that I showed you earlier as well. So this stage here will take a second to run. I'll let it run. Let's go to our intrusion detection system so I can show you what I mean that it didn't fire. So here's my Suricata, my security onion Maybe let's start with Kibana. I'm looking for alerts that are low, high, medium severity from the last 15 minutes. So let's refresh that. Last 15 minutes, I don't see anything. Maybe let's make it 30. We should at least see Nmap stuff here. Okay, so this is a reminder to me that we actually have been here for more than 15 minutes. Okay, you see all these alerts here? They have nothing to do with the exploit that we're running right now. They're all Nmap related alerts, as you can see here. They're all ET-scan, Nmap scan alerts. These ones are just what we've seen time and time again on this channel. You run Nmap without any specific filters or anything like that out of the box, you get this noise. We do not have anything to do with my Metasploit right now delivering the payload and sending it and getting to this path here on my system, which is kind of interesting. So it's still running. Why is that the case? I will bring you to Security Onion. You can see I ran a few commands here. I can run my history. Okay, so if I list all my rules in my Security Onion, this is network intrusion detection rules. And I grep for ProxyShell, which is what I'm doing right now. I put some rules in there today. There was only one. I think the first one here was the only rule that was there. I found some rules from reading around on the internet and also just trying to understand what they are doing. So here's a couple of rules that we have. So what I have highlighted here is one simple rule. This alert here. This one is looking for ProxyShell, but my current attack here might not get caught, especially the other one that I was using, because it's looking for the .jsp extension. If I don't have that, it will not trigger. So I was like, oh, great, I'm going to modify it. I went and I modified it, and I put, instead of JSP, I was looking for SPX. So we have this regex here that's looking for the random string number that we saw when we deliver the payload, and then .aspx. If you look, right here, this is a random string number that's being merged, .aspx, and we're looking for that on the wire on the network. That's the most important thing, is we're looking for that this file here being transferred either as a GET request or as a POST request on the network. We send it as a POST request, like this one here, when it said it was writing. This was a POST request to our Exchange server on this path here, random string.aspx. Okay. So it looks like our exploit is working, because it's doing the cleanup for itself here. This is what we're trying to detect using the rule that I was showing you right here, writing or retrieving it. Right now, it actually worked. This is the retrieval process that happened in this later stage. But either way, we need to identify this, and we got our shell back here. So we did get our shell. Now back to the rule that I was showing you, then we can use the shell the way we want. How is this rule actually working? We want an alert. This is where it starts. It's TCP. I said any here because I just wanted external or internal. I didn't care. I wanted to see it. Coming to my home net, which is defined, I could have said any here again. This method doesn't really matter. I mean, the message doesn't matter. It was supposed to be a flow to the server. The connection has to be established. The content, we are looking for a GET request with HTTP method to the OWA or auth. OWA auth. Let's go back. OWA auth. I wonder if I should have added this one. No, but it should still match because we're looking for OWA and auth here. All right. And then, of course, URI, in the HTTP URI, we're looking for this regex here. So some random string that ends with .aspx. Let me know in the comments right now, from the way I just described how I think this rule is working to how I delivered the payload, say using Metasploit, why I might not have gotten an alert from it working. But this actually happened. We saw it here in the payload. We saw that the rule is there. It's actually loaded on my Suricata. I did all the good stuff. So this should have fired. I'm still stuck on, somebody let me know in the comments why you think this rule didn't fire. But since we're still there, we can just sys info. Make sure that we know the computer that we're on. So we have Metasploit. We are on mailer DC, which is our actual machine here, is mailer DC. All right. It's Windows Server, and we have a build number. It's a 64-bit, and the domain is IT Security Labs. 8 logged in users. So I logged in 8 times, 8 different times. Yeah, I've been back in. I've terminated my sessions and came back in. So it's the same user, but just that. So it's a Metapredator shell. If we really wanted to get on the system, we can type shell. Now we are on the actual system. Net users, I think. We can see the users there. We have, of course, a bunch of mailbox users here. But the real users are administrator, Alex, DA, Bob, and Phil. I created an account for you, Phil, over here. So all these accounts here, we have access to, because if we do a where am I / priv or privs, in this case, or get UID, come on. Oh, that's a Metasploit thing. We can see that actually with all these privileges here, we are an administrator of the system. In fact, we are system. So what this leaves us is to go back to what the attackers in real life did. Or what did they do? According to our map, they gained initial access using the exploitation, which is very trivial, like I showed you. Through web shell created in ASPX, some random number here, .aspx, you can see it, and login.axpx. Okay, great. They ran commands like ifconfig net user. We already ran net user. So yeah, Jupiter says potato attack. Yeah, we don't need to do a potato attack if we're already system. Potato is for us to gain, system level access, and I think we're already there. So I guess we might as well follow in the steps of these big, groups by running ifconfig. I think it's kind of funny that I'm saying that, but yeah, they said this is what they ran. ipconfig. All right, running ipconfig actually, while it's a funny little command here, can show us if this is a multi-horned network. So if you go for things like CISSP or OSCP or the OSEP that I'm actually signed up for right now, you might miss out a lot if this is a multi-horned, multi-network or multi-horned machine, because this is on one network, but sometimes I've done it as a sysadmin. People connect 2 different networks. So all you need to do is set up a proxy chain, scan the other network to see if you can do some lateral movement and go places, which is a really fun thing to do, especially for OSCP or OSEP exam type of stuff. Really cool stuff that you can do. Okay, we did what the bad people did. The last part that they did was they dumped some passwords, or they gained persistence here when they ran net user default account password. Actually, yeah, they just really they created an account called default account. This doesn't exist on Windows. Do you see this one? I think it's clever in a way, naming it default account, because before I leave here, when you say run net user, none of these are called default account. So they're trying to trick somebody who has not worked in Windows for a long time to think that default account should belong. They're really trying so hard to blend in. This blending in doesn't work though. I used to be a Windows administrator, so I know default account, that is an account somebody created. So I guess net user default account password. Let's create it then. So I hope you are learning as well that, hey, they name it so they can live off the land. So let's see if we can add this one. I gave it the password add. Well, I guess that's our password for default account. Our apparently password 123 with an exclamation mark meets our password requirement policy. But yeah, that's what we have there. By the way, you can fix this by making sure that, especially in Azure, common passwords like this can be added to a file and say, these are not accepted ever. But in this case, of course, my domain controller is not that smart. Okay. Then we need to activate the account. I think that's what they did here. Net user default account /active yes. So this is just persistence. We're adding an additional account there to make sure that, just in case things don't work. But I will tell you, without a doubt, when I was a Windows administrator, I knew how many accounts were in my domain and how many accounts should be in the administrators group, especially the administrators group. If they did persistence and did some funny business here where they added this account to an administrator group, I'll get an alert that says, hey, a new administrator has been created. And if I didn't hire somebody, a contractor or an employee, and a new account was added as an administrator, that's an indicator for me saying, what the hell? Where are you coming from? But in this case, this default account is just activated. Let's add it to the administrator group. So I was just doing this today. Net group, domain admins, then the name of the account, add. You know what? Let's add them to all these. This is how we add people to a domain account. To groups in this case. The more I'm thinking about it, I'm like, okay, this is just redundant at this point. Let's move on and actually load the passwords. If you want me to add them to the groups, let me know. But if I say net user, now my default account is showing as belonging. This is an awesome thing to do. I think it's amazing. All right, now let's move on. Too much fun in the Windows machine here. Move on to our Metasploit shell. Let's load Kiwi here, which is Mimikatz, by the way, just a variant for that. So in this case, now that we have Kiwi loaded, or Mimikatz, as you can see, we can start doing the second phase of the attack, which is what they do. They did loot the passwords. Credential access, LSAS dump. This is what they use LSAS. They just had to dump credentials. This is Windows, by the way. I'm going to show you we can use Mimikatz to do that. So by the end of the night, you can say at least we followed in the steps of an APT, or advanced persistent threat, or a nation state actor, which I think I honestly think that it's better for us to do things that way. It's actually more fun for me to try to follow what they're doing as well. All right, let's see if we can do dump some credentials using Kiwi. Let me find my documentation. There's multiple ways you can do it. I just need one. Come on. You know what? Forget it. Let's ask for help. So if we do this, this is an LSA dump for SAM. So we loaded Kiwi, and if we do the LSA dump, that will actually be what the attackers did there, or LSS dump. Let me see if I can just run that. Or I can. All right. I was able to get the administrator's NTLM hash. I can do the pass the hash attack on the network now and get in as administrator. This is not what I had planned today. I wanted to do the other one, but hey, we can do the LSA dump. I'm more interested in the dcsyc attack as well, because that actually can get you other domain controller information from other machines. Like if you had a user that you found but doesn't live on this mini domain controller, but they're on other domain controllers, you can use that. But yeah, as you can see here, we have our NTLM hash for the administrator, which is almost like game over. If we had other users that we wanted to dump their hashes, we can as well. And I see the comments here. Thanks very much, Matthew, for sharing. You can add me on LinkedIn. I will accept your invites. Please don't send me any sales pitches. I accept people's invites, and the next thing is like, hey, we're selling this too. Wow, there goes our invite. All right, let me see if we can actually, let's use LSA dump to see if we can, dcsyc to see if we can get other users. Other users hash, because this one dumped for the administrator and the guest. Net user. Let's say I'm targeting Phil. I'm going to target Phil here. I can actually load my Kiwi, make sure that it's still in there. Then do this, question mark. I like to use the dcsyc NTLM, retrieve user account NTLM hash, SID, and all that. This, or you can just do a dcsyc, but let's use this one. I'm interested in one user, Phil. And here's our user, Phil, and we just got their NTLM hash and the LM hash. You can steal this hash here. Maybe I should just go to my temp. Save it in a file. Really? So much for trying to use Nano. Let's use VI. Here's our hash for Phil. So I'll do this. Then I can run John. Maybe I'll use Roku.txt, maybe I'll use command.txt, who knows? But this should crack the password hash for us using John. What? So we use a wait list user share John password list. I hope my password is in there. Because I might have to point to what is it, Roku the text or something better. So this cracking might take a while, but I have a John cheat sheet that I used to rely on a lot, depending on the formats. But if it doesn't correct my password on time for Phil, I'll be there. You know what? Let me see if I can just cheat. Let me check if it's in there. All right, so this is how you crack the passwords, and hopefully it cracks in time. But I just wanted to show you that what we did here was just using publicly available information to inspire our little engagement based on a real known APT group. In this case, is this one called Phosphorus, Charming Kitten, or Newcatter. They have a lot of names. This is still happening today. I was looking on Shodan today. There's a bunch of machines out there as well. There's a lot of indicators of compromise, one being what we just did here, which is delivering an ASPX shell. Whether you use Metasploit or you use PowerShell scripts, the process is almost identical. In fact, let me show you the second one. So we actually go full circle. Forget the cracking. I think I set up a secure password for my user Phil. If you wanted, you can also use this ProxyShell.py against our domain. If you run it, it's going to do the same exact thing. So you can come and modify an existing Python script, which gives you more flexibility than rewriting an entire module. But this is the same. We are reaching out. In this case, we're getting a web shell on this location here. Let me show you what this web shell looks like, by the way. They're ugly. And this will answer why our shell didn't work. Come on. I think this thing is frozen. So that is putting our web shells in this directory here, which is, by the way, accessible to everybody. But it will keep failing until we get one. So it will try the path from client, which is on the root of the directory. If it doesn't work on the root, it will go to OWA, auth, and start putting the shells there. You will notice that the names that this particular exploit is putting are shorter than the ones that we put last time. This is just like PG, 5 characters. The other one that we used with Metasploit was putting more in here, including numbers. This one does not even have numbers. But it's moving from OS auth. Then once auth doesn't work, it will move to the directory after that until it can write. So for detection, if you are like looking at this, like if I had been doing this at the beginning of like last year, if I was looking at this, I'll be like, okay, for detection, I can just look for simple logic. If within 2 minutes I see, or I mean, in this case, within a minute, I see a file being written that ends with .aspx to these different directories in the same exact order, I know somebody's running this script here. So the logic can be put in place, write a simple Yara rule or some logic in whatever SIM solution that you're using and be able to detect this. Or in this case, there shouldn't be a reason why people should be dropping new files, say in the current on your mail server. I mean, these files don't just pop up. They are required by the system, so you can normalize the 20 files that are in there and leave the rest out there. All right, so this will actually give us another shell too, as long as I'm not using the same 443 port. I don't think I'm using the same port. Okay, my Metasploit is here, and we looted some credentials. All right, where is it? And this one will finish. While I'm running this, let me see. Yes, thanks for joining live. Hassan, hello, welcome. I don't think I've seen your name on the stream. thanks for joining. This is us doing ethical hacking and some detection and just explaining some of these interesting things. It says, what do you do more, blue team or offensive team? For me, I do mostly blue team stuff, mostly detection. So you can see why I like to talk a lot about detection, suricata and all that stuff. But in a couple weeks here, I'll be doing almost all the time offensive. It'll be a red team engagement kind of stuff. So I'm excited about that as well. I will be doing both for a living, which is going to be very exciting. Full time. So if you like, Matthew is right there. If you like to, if you're just starting out, highly encourage you to make sure that you understand defending, because at the end of the day, you can attack all you want, but defense, that's where the money is at. All right, I got me some useless shell here. It's a PowerShell script shell. I don't like this one, not because I don't understand PowerShell, but with this particular script, this one does not work. Because even if you say, where am I, which PowerShell should understand, it doesn't actually run. If you run it again, you actually get what is known as a shell. So depending on which part it ran on, but this time we actually got this one. So we wrote to this particular path, and we got a PowerShell prompt here, which is good. And by the way, this script here is generating a random listening port. It's not actually listening on 444, which is nice. I'll run it again one more time. We don't have to watch it, but I would like us to go back to our rules, because I just showed you in this case, these ones were suricata rules that I was looking at earlier and explaining the path and how they work. We also had some Yara rules. Let me just do a history. So these rules are in here. You won't be able to see these rules, which is interesting in Security Onion. Forget it. Let's do it the correct way. 282. All right. In the rules here, in this directory, if you're using Security Onion, this is the Straka rules. This is where we put the Yara rules for file identification from file metadata. I have a repos.txt here. If you do a cat.txt, if you have your own Security Onion, this file will not exist. You have to create it. You can point your Security Onion to specific repos from GitHub and pull Yara rules automatically by just running a Yara update, which is kind of cool. So I'll bring you to the ones that I loaded. And this is how, if you end up doing detection, understanding how the attack works and also using community-based rules and also, the ones that you have really helps. So here I loaded all these. Where is my ProxyShell here? These are the ones that I was more interested in. Yara is slightly different from the other rules that I was showing you earlier, because the format is different, but it's still the same. In this case, they were actually putting known threat actors in some of these. So some of these I didn't expect them to, trigger. But more props to this Florian Roth, really good. Some of these rules are really good. Let me see. They even have references here. This one says detects web shells dropped by ProxyShell exploitation based on their header must be PST and base64 decoded request. So we need to decode this. This is from Tobias. and there was a known hash that you can use here. And they were looking for this specific string that people were using. So these rules are, community-based rules. If I were managing a SIEM solution at this time, I would have been contributing to these rules as well, trying to identify, okay, what is the behavior? How can we detect it? And write some Yara rules in this case. Okay, so that was Yara. And as you can see in my lab environment, they did not fire. Even if I'll do last 30 minutes, 24 hours. All right, that brings us to the question that I brought up. Okay, why didn't the rules fire? The one thing that you'll notice is either when we were using Metasploit or not, we were going after port 443. And I think that that had something to do with us not seeing anything. Was the server requires forces traffic to go through port 443, and the self-signed certificate was enough for it to encrypt traffic, and it wasn't even validating the certificate. That's what I think. That's my theory. So I was seeing a bunch of gibberish in my PCAP earlier, which didn't show me delivering these ASPX files correctly. I did, however, notice some GET requests, but they were not enough to detect this. So I said something like that. Well, I know I delivered a bunch of ASPX files. Oh, come on. Okay. We should be able to see a bunch of GET requests to those ASPX files, but they only showed up when port 80 was used. They didn't show up when we used port 443, which shows me the encryption was working and we were not doing a bunch of noise. So you notice the only files we see are the logon.aspx. We don't see the bunch of gibberish.xpx files showing up here. The encryption was blocking us from seeing this. So we need to be able to decrypt this traffic or we don't see anything, which is a shame because detection for this one would have been more fun in this lab here. But yeah, that's what we had, and that's why I think we didn't see anything. Encryption. There is a way to force Exchange to not go through any encryption. I don't know why you would do that. I don't know what mental state you'll be in, unless if you're in a lab environment like me. But if you go to ISS Manager, you can go and ask it to not do that. And I'll show you. And I bet you didn't think that we'll be talking about Exchange configuration and the OWA web interface. So here we have two sites that are running. We have the default and the back end. Guys, this brings me memories from back in the day when I used to manage an on-site Exchange server. Don't do it. Go to Azure if you can. It's terrible. It was bad. HTTP redirect here for the default site. You can actually redirect. But what I wanted to show you actually wasn't the redirect. It was SSL settings. This is where we set SSL settings for Exchange. Require SSL is checked for us. You can come and do that and leave ignore and try to access your email via just regular HTTP without HTTPS. If you check require SSL, it's going to be redirected every single time to HTTPS, which is what was happening here. And you need to do it on the default site here and also on the back end side in the SSL setting. require SSO is enabled. Kind of interesting stuff, sysadmin stuff, but also knowing how Exchange works kind of helps us a little bit here in understanding how things are working. And you can set things up here. For OWA, I think I needed to change this one. If I change this one and apply, now I can go to /OWA and not need SSO, and maybe I can detect things. And by the way, we've also got a shell here. Would this one accept us? Yeah, this one already says NT system here. So you can use either way, one or the other. All right. That was our Microsoft Exchange attack and detect lab. We didn't really detect much here, but at least we understand why we didn't detect it. I showed you the require SSL settings that we had, and we're ignoring client certificates, so everything was being encrypted, so we couldn't see anything. SSL decrypt would fix this problem for most people. If you like this type of content, please remember to like and subscribe to my channel. It really helps me a lot when YouTube sees that people are subscribing and also they're interacting with my content. That means that we get to reach more people and we can grow this community of learners like myself and you so that we can actually grow together. Thank you for being here, and I hope next week to bring yet another Windows machine. And again, if you want this machine that I had today, just comment there that you want me to post a link, and sometime tomorrow after I export it, I'll send you a machine that you can import in VirtualBox. It's a Windows Server machine, and you can do the attack just like what I did today. Otherwise, thank you for being here, and I appreciate everyone. See you next week.